Hello and welcome to India's World. The use of social media and internet to promote extremism and terrorism is one of the greatest threats that countries including India face today. Many nations are struggling with institutional mechanisms to curb the spread of terrorism through the internet. In the UK, the House of Commons Home Affairs Committee has come out with a report on the use of social media in promoting extremist ideology and terrorism. The report released about a week ago notes that the internet through Facebook, YouTube and Twitter has transformed the way terrorist organizations can influence and radicalize people. Keith Vaz, the chairman of the committee, has said, huge corporations like Google, Facebook and Twitter with their billion-dollar incomes are consciously failing to tackle this threat and passing the buck by hiding behind their supranational legal status despite knowing that their sites are being used by the instigators of terror. Today we are going to discuss what national governments can do individually and together to prevent the use of internet for spreading terrorism and extremism. My guests today are Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, one of our foremost diplomats. He's been Foreign Secretary in India's ambassador to Egypt, Turkey, France and Russia. Mr. Rana Banerji, a well-known expert on terrorism. He has retired from the Indian Administrative Service and was in the Cabinet Secretariat. And we also have with us Mr. Ravi Visvesvaraya Prasad. He's a high-tech entrepreneur, a telecom and infotech consultant, and a well-known columnist. He also heads a think tank on defense and security issues. I welcome all of you to this discussion. Ambassador Sibal, let me begin with you. Would it be correct to say that we are moving towards a time where increasingly terrorists will not come from across the border trained in terrorist camps, but they would be actually disgruntled citizens who have been brainwashed into extremist ideology through the internet and prompted to undertake terrorist acts?
I think you are right. This is the kind of challenge that we are facing today. Although, mind you, in the past, the biggest terrorist attacks occurred when this problem was not confronting us, like the bombings in New York and United States, and some of the terrorist attacks that we've been suffering over the years, or in Britain, or in Spain, or elsewhere. But now, with the rise of the ISIS and the radicalization that we see in the Islamic world in general, the people behind this have now found this new tool to mobilize individuals and radicalize them, and very quickly. In the past, it took 1 year or more, or several months to spot individuals who had those tendencies through personal interaction, assessment, evaluation, see what their inclinations are, and then drive them into that, drive them towards radicalization. Now on the internet, they spread this kind of ideology, and individuals pick it up and get radicalized very quickly, 1 month, 2 months, and commit these acts. So you're absolutely right that we are moving, the world is moving in this direction, and it's a serious challenge that all of us are facing.
Rana, you've been studying terrorism for long. How has the internet transformed the way terrorist organizations are radicalizing youngsters and others? And has this had some impact in India also? Because there have been some reports of youngsters from Kerala, Maharashtra wanting to join ISIS based on reading stuff on the internet.
Yes, certainly. See, social media provides certain anonymity, not only for propagation of ideology, but also to provide a platform for early recruitment, and also for imparting technological information in a very rudimentary manner about, manufacture of home-made explosives and things which can make an impact. So even for the common person who doesn't have access, they provide an appeal that this can be done very easily without too much cost. So it has an appeal.
And in India?
In India, yes, there has been a fairly serious problem which was most clearly articulated in the case of the, last year, Mehdi Masroor Biswas, who was, by daytime he was a corporate executive, but at night he became a Quranic teacher, and he gave himself the name of Shami Witness, and he had lakhs and thousands of followers all over the world till he was discovered.
In Kashmir also, hasn't it had an impact in radicalizing the youngsters who are already predisposed towards militancy, but then you have access to ISIS propaganda and it transforms that militancy into something else?
Well, the alienation in Kashmir stems from somewhat different sort of origins. But yes, the impact of the propaganda has been there. But before that also, the Jamaat-e-Islami Hind had been, influenced or got influenced by the spread of Salafi Wahhabi Islam. And that has eroded the concept of Kashmiriyat. But I don't think that it is a very specific threat of the ISIS in Kashmir.
All right. Ravi, you are the technical expert on this panel. Is it true that extremist groups and terrorist groups are operating a dispersed network? That is, if you close down some of their sites, it's very easy for them to get some other sites up
Yes,
simultaneously.
absolutely. They use peer-to-peer networks, for instance, Tor. And in fact, the the UK House of Commons report that you referred to, I went through that and I find it rather naive and simplistic in the way it talks about shutting down sites. Because it's talked about Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, and really, and Twitter's responded saying they've been taking down these sites. But look at how ISIS is operating. They're migrating, as Twitter shuts down the network, they're migrating to a network called Diaspora. Now, Diaspora is a very interesting network because it offers total anonymity and security, and nobody can take it down. Diaspora itself cannot take down a post which has been put up. Because what the terrorists are using social media for two purposes: propagation, propagating their ideology, and communications. Communications are now end-to-end secure communications with end-to-end AES encryption. There's no practical way any intelligence agency in the world can decrypt this in real time. They cannot even figure out whom you're communicating with. Now, in terms of propaganda, okay, you could ask Twitter to take down its posts, and Twitter said they've taken down 360,000 posts related to terrorism. But when you go to Diaspora, and ISIS have almost 1 million accounts on Diaspora. In Diaspora, once I put up a post, even Diaspora cannot take that down.
No, you said that, but why is it that networks like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube have also become vehicles of choice for not only ISIS but even for a lot of other groups, extremist groups?
Oh, absolutely. Because see, for propaganda, what does Twitter or YouTube or Facebook allow you to do? You become a TV station. Each individual becomes a TV station with instantaneous reach and worldwide reach. Therefore, you can propagate anything you like, and by the time anyone catches on and wants to pull you down, it'll take days for them to do so. For instance, you want to monitor the amount of YouTube videos which are uploaded in a minute will take an intelligence agency about 2 years to do. Therefore, a terrorist organization, or anyone for that matter, has an international reach instantaneously.
Okay. All right. So we need to take a break at this point. We'll continue with this interesting discussion in a bit. Stay with us. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing whether social media has facilitated the globalization of extremist ideology and terrorism. Ambassador Sibal, why has the ISIS felt the need to decentralize the planning of terrorist attacks? And is this why, because of social media, that we are seeing the spawning of so-called lone wolf attacks?
Well, you know, if they centralize everything, then they become an easy target. So you knock them out, and the network, I'm not talking of the social media network, but the people who are deciding all this, the leaders of this movement, they can be more easily eliminated. That is one aspect. The other is that if they can use the social media to radicalize people, disgruntled people, or those who are otherwise prone to being religious-minded and Sharia-oriented and don't like the surroundings in which they live, they can be mobilized to commit terror attacks. And this is very, very difficult to control. Very, very difficult to control.
But it's also easier for them to sort of open franchisee operations. Anybody can become a franchisee and say
exactly.
I am ISIS.
And even if somebody really is not a member of the ISIS in that sense, he can claim that he's doing it on behalf of the ISIS, because this gives him a sense of belonging and identity and participation in the large cause which ISIS and the Khilafat stand for. So the big challenge is actually the lone wolf attacks, as we've seen in recent events as in Paris, in Nice, for example, or in Belgium, or in Germany, or elsewhere. It's a huge problem, and it's very difficult to control because individuals are involved. You can't control all individuals.
Yeah. Individuals are involved, but so is the internet involved. So what are the laws that exist in India to deal with the misuse of the internet in this manner, and what is being done in India to prevent internet abuse or of propagation of extremist and terrorist ideologies?
Well, you have the Information Technology Act of 2000, which was updated in December 2008. But let me come back to the legal issues involved. The UK House of Commons report castigated Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, saying that they're not doing enough to take offending terrorist material down, the content down. Now, just about 15 days ago, around 15th August, there was a very interesting lawsuit decided in California. What happened was that a victim of ISIS who was a military contractor in Jordan was killed, and his kin have sued Twitter, saying that the people who were radicalized by Twitter, and they went to court in Twitter. Around 15th August, the California judge said that Twitter could not be blamed. In fact, there's another lawsuit pending by one of the victims of the Paris attacks. And this essentially is because you have the US Communications Decency Act, and Section 230 of that absolves common platforms, social media, from content that their users post on it.
Yeah, but
they have total immunity.
But nation states still have to take precautions.
Well, nation states can, but as I said,
so those precautions will be legal as well as maybe extra legal. I don't know. So what are those precautions that India is taking?
Well, legally, there has not been a single case against a social platform that has succeeded. Because in USA, and that's where all the Twitter servers are, Facebook servers are, they have immunity from what their users post on them. They cannot be held liable under Section 230 of the Communications Act. In India, they are protected under Section 79 of the Information Technology Act. The intermediaries have a certain safe harbor, that if they respond to complaints within 36 hours, you cannot take any legal proceedings against them. Yeah. If they take longer than 36 hours to respond, you can go to court against them. But again, you have to prove their case, you have to prove contributory liability, you have to prove vicarious liability. Not easy to do.
All right.
Nowhere in the world has any prosecution for terror content succeeded against an ISP.
Let's stick to 36 hours. Now, if you have to take action within 36 hours on taking down a site or removing a certain kind of content, you need to have institutions where you complain about this content. So, does any institutional mechanism exist in India where I can ring up and say, I find this content promotes terrorism, it's extremist in nature, therefore, please take this up and do something? Because in Britain, they have this counter-terrorism internet referral unit, which can be approached by any ordinary citizen. Do we have anything like that?
Well, crowdsourcing is something that is catching on in India. You have police patrol Facebook sites. So some people could reach that police patrolling site, but it needs more advertising. There is also, a more sort of inclusive and, transparent approach which depends on community outreach or, working on family support schemes.
So you're talking about deradicalization. I'm merely
also in the context of social media write-ups.
Okay.
So if you find that the police beat is having contact with what they did with after Mehdi Masroor Biswas case, some of the boys who were in Maharashtra, including one who came back from Iraq. Now the parents were approached, and the local police then set up a scheme where any son who was found or anybody who was found to be excessively involved in internet, either through cyber cafes or even in his home, and the parents were asked to bring this to the notice of the police. Yeah. And then these sites started being monitored in a very discreet way.
Okay, quickly, because I want to go to him now. You want to add something?
Procedures are specified under Section 79, very detailed procedures whereby people can make complaints about offending material. But these rules have to be very strictly followed, and there are different procedures for content hosted from India where the servers are in India, and different procedures for content hosted overseas and where the servers are overseas.
But if I were to ask 10 people I know that you know who to complain to, I can lay a bet with you that
Well, they won't know,
99%, if not
and these
100% would say we
also
don't
these
know.
procedures have to be strictly followed, because Indian courts have actually thrown out complaints saying that the procedures were not followed by the complainant or by the intermediary or by the police in notifying the intermediary.
Okay, so there is legal lacuna, but let's say has India established a dynamic relationship with, say, Europol, which already has such mechanisms in place? Does it have links with Interpol on preventing the spread of terrorist ideology through internet? I mean, you don't have to be part of EU to be coordinating with Europol.
Well, I can't answer your question specifically because I don't know what steps we have taken, because there's now much more enhanced counterterrorism cooperation between us and Europe and United States, and I'm sure these particular issues are being addressed. Even in my time, many years ago, we were wanting more cooperation with Europol on the issue of terrorism, but not in the context in which you were asking me this question. But the problem basically are two, three. One is that the servers are not in India. The servers are all abroad, so we have no control over the servers. The other big issue is that whenever you touch the Facebook or any of the social media, the response from the civil society is terrible. They just don't want it to be in any way restricted, unmindful of the problems that you mentioned, because they think that often this can be abused for political purposes. And third is the attitude of the US administration. Anytime you want to touch the social media in any sense, at the highest level in the United States, they'll start condemning you for violating freedom of speech. We've seen Secretary of State Hillary Clinton admonishing us 2-3 years ago when some steps were taken against Google or intended to be taken against Google, and they used, actually they were very unethical. They got an article written in New York Times that the Indian government was trying to curb this, and Secretary of State Clinton expressed her unhappiness at this efforts to curb freedom of speech. So there are layers and layers of problem, but the basic problem is that we don't have control over servers.
Okay, all right. We need to take a break again at this point. We'll be back again in a bit. Stay with us. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing how social media might be globalizing or is globalizing terrorism and extremist ideology. Ravi, shouldn't the internet industry, the technology companies, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, shouldn't they be doing something proactively to match the efforts of national governments to prevent the spread of terrorist ideology?
Well, Twitter just said a couple of days ago that there's no algorithm, no neural networks, no artificial intelligence that can handle the terrorism activities at the speed at which content is being posted up. Because what's happening in information warfare in these issues, it's highly asymmetric warfare, and the advantage is overwhelmingly with the attacker, with the terrorist, by a factor of 1 billion to 1. Even to try to look at content that's possibly terrorist, it will take you 2 to 3 years to do that. You can't prevent terrorist attacks that way.
Okay, let me take a related question.
With, networks like Diaspora, where a person can put up content, you can't track him down because you don't know his identity, you don't know his location, and you can't take down that content. It's the advantage
take down the entire network. But let me ask you this: the former British Prime Minister David Cameron, he said this about internet companies, and I quote him. He said, many of their commercial models are built around monitoring platforms for personal data, packaging it, and selling it to third parties. And when it comes to doing what is right for their business, they are happy to engineer technologies to track our likes and dislikes. So that's why you get the kind of ads you get when you go on to Facebook or Twitter or Google search. Then he says, but when it comes to doing what is right in the fight against terrorism, we often hear that it is all too difficult, which we are hearing even from Ravi today. Do you agree with David Cameron?
Well, there is a certain inevitability about it. It's, the Twitter and all these sites, they refer to their own helplessness even in terms of stuffing problems. As Ravi mentioned, because the posting is so voluminous, even if they have staff dedicated to screen this, they will say that we are short of staff and we cannot give so much staff only to take down these objectionable posts. So that is a valid problem. So we have to look at other means of
what could be these other means?
As I mentioned about family outreach, and then also discrete monitoring. It will always be struggling against odds. But still, in India, a start would seem to have been made. And then there is this reach out personally to the parents and to the social, society around the offensive users. And this has had some impact in curtailing. Also, preventive arrests are being made.
I wish I could agree with you. I mean, I agree with the second half of what you're saying. But if these companies are making millions of dollars every day from billions of users, then how much of that investment is going into preventing this kind of destructive content? Very little.
Yes,
in fact, the House of Commons Committee says that the staff for monitoring this content is only in hundreds.
That's right.
And the people who are monitoring your likes and my dislikes and what we want to buy on the net are in tens of thousands. So it's a convenient excuse. So on convenient excuses, my question to you is, are social media companies, internet technology companies hiding behind their supranational legal status, or hiding behind the fact that they are based in US and companies where you probably can't act against them because of laws of those countries? And that's allowing, as the House of Commons report says, the internet to become sort of, or these sites to become the wild west of the internet, where you can do whatever you like and nobody can curb you, nobody can act against you.
Yes and no. I don't think that these companies would willfully want to promote terrorism. It's not in their interest, even if
But they're not willing to invest money in preventing terrorism.
Even if they're not, even if they're multinational companies and therefore are not looking at the issue in the context of the interests of individual countries, etc., etc. Nevertheless, I don't think that they want to promote terrorism. On the other hand, the problem is that United States is relatively protected from terrorism. In fact, far more protected than any other country. So maybe that's the reason why they think that this is not all that much of a threat. Remember President Obama, when the ISIS first surfaced, he said, no, we can handle it. It's not too much of a problem for the United States of America. It'll take a long time to deal with it, etc. So they're very insouciant about it. So there is that aspect. And of course, the other thing is their business models. And as I mentioned earlier, to repeat, that they just don't want the breakup of the internet and other sovereignties exercising sovereignty over servers. They don't want to do that because this is a huge instrument in their hands, and this is a huge source of American soft power, where these companies are associated with freedom of expression, social media exchanges, bringing people together. The youngsters are so enthused by all this. So it's a very, very complex problem.
I'm not denying all that, Ravi, the positive aspects of social media. But there is this dark side. And is there any way at all of tackling it?
Well, practically speaking, I would say no, because you have end-to-end encryption. Let's say WhatsApp. I can send messages end-to-end encrypted, and all of his sleuths will not be able to decrypt it in real time. They'll take 5 years to decrypt what I sent to you in 2 seconds ago. So I can plan any number of attacks over WhatsApp, and in fact, just yesterday the German and French governments were asking WhatsApp to share its encryption protocols, and they said, well, we don't, because we generate multiple level keys, so we cannot decrypt what our users send.
So Rana, how do you deal with terrorism on the one hand, and on the other hand, the inability of technology companies who run social media platforms to say we can do nothing?
From the point of view of prevention, we have to play catch up all the time. And as I said, it's a very difficult game. But that's the way to go. We cannot be complacent and just let it ride. As regards the companies, I really don't know. I mean, we have to balance between control and the image of freedom of speech and access, etc. in a democracy. I don't think we should sacrifice that at any cost.
Last word to you. I mean, shouldn't nations be cooperating in this? I mean, I know you said America doesn't. But if it's an American interest to cooperate with India, with Europe and with UK and with everybody else, why on earth would they not do it?
Well,
because they also say that they're fighting a war against terrorism.
Two things. One, the American government at the executive level or the counterterrorism experts may think along those lines that we need to put more curbs. But then the American legal system and the political system is such that the government can't easily impose constraints on these companies. Remember the recent case where they wanted some information from Google and Google said nothing doing, we won't give it to you, etc., etc. They challenged that. Eventually the government said we will decrypt it ourselves so we don't need to rely on your keys, etc. So there's the American legal system that also stands in the way. I can't see a solution to this. Maybe like smallpox and polio, we succeeded in eradicating it. Now we have to eradicate extremism from the minds of certain communities. And if we succeed in that, then we'll have an answer to the questions you've asked me.
All right. We run out of time. So one sentence, please.
Yeah, I just want to take up on what you said about US not
Quickly.
working. Yeah, for instance, if you look at what when France tried to control Yahoo in the neo-Nazi case for selling Nazi material on its servers, and it just went into a whole legal loop, and the US courts threw out the French court's verdicts.
So there is no hope.
There is no hope.
All right.
And
on that sad note,
not
I
even legally.
must say we've really run out of time. I'd like to thank you, Ravi, Prasad, Rana, Banerji, Ambassador Kanwal, Sibal, for participating in this interesting discussion. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week as usual. Until then, goodbye, and thanks for watching India's World.